Tracey joins us now. Michael, what happened?
Well, I was invited to attend this press conference, believe it or not, by Ro Khanna's staff. So I was an invited member of the press. I was duly admitted, and I waited my turn to ask a pertinent question. I posed the question to Bradley Edwards, who is a lawyer, who was one of the longtime legal antagonists of Jeffrey Epstein and represented many of Epstein's purported victims, including Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who was declared to have been deceased in April of this year. And throughout this press conference, Virginia Roberts Giuffre was being spoken of as though she were this truth-telling martyr, as though she had an unblemished record of credibility. She was the one who actually spawned, in large part, the initial theory that Epstein orchestrated a massive pedophile ring and enforced it through a blackmail operation which ensnared prominent people. Edwards is actually one of the two lawyers who filed the motion on Giuffre's behalf in 2014 that first introduced these allegations. So I wanted to ask Bradley Edwards, why is it that we should think of Virginia Roberts Giuffre as a remotely credible person, given her demonstrable track record of repeat fabrications? She accused Alan Dershowitz for nearly a decade straight of having abused her sexually as a minor. She described in graphic detail at least six instances in which she had vehemently claimed that Alan Dershowitz had committed sex crimes against her, and then she recanted those claims. Edwards was one of her lawyers when she recanted those claims. She had what was called a memoir manuscript that she wrote, hoping to get a giant book deal or even movie deal around 2011, 2012, in which she made a host of salacious allegations against prominent individuals like the former majority leader of the U.S. Senate, George Mitchell, or a Harvard professor named Stephen that she claimed that she had sex with. She then retracted the claim about the Harvard professor while she was under deposition.
So, Michael, you've chronicled this at great length at your great Substack, and I invite readers to go and make up their own minds. Actually, there was another moment at the press conference that really seemed to throw cold water on the claim of there being a list of pedophiles who Jeffrey Epstein had procured underage girls from. Let's play this SOT 1 from the attorney, and I want you to respond to this.
Every one of these women was abused by Jeffrey Epstein, and his scheme was to personally abuse women. When they reached a certain age, he did farm a section of them, some of them, out to some of his friends.
Michael, what stood out to me there was him saying when they reached a certain age. It sounds to me like what he's saying is, and then when they became legal, he would start to farm them out. Am I making too much of that phrase? Because that in and of itself would really upend the whole idea that there was a pedophilia ring and that there was anybody else implicated specifically in the underage aspect here, which gets all the headlines.
Well, Edwards writes in his own book, Bradley Edwards writes in his own book that there's never really been any compelling evidence that Epstein engaged in blackmail. And the so-called client list is kind of central to the mythology that's been allowed to proliferate unchecked around this stuff. And it's just, by all available evidence, a pure fantasy. So now one of these new victims, Miss Phillips, I spoke to her at the press conference today. I wanted to know, hey, how much money did you get in these multi-million-dollar settlements that became available after Epstein's death? She acknowledged that she got a bunch of money from the J.P. Morgan settlement, but wouldn't give me the exact amount because she wants to keep that secret, understandably. But now she's saying, oh, yeah, we're going to invent our own list. So this is never ending. There's never any ability to falsify the core mythological claims of this story. So there was a mob in front of the Capitol today. People were convinced that Donald Trump is a pedophile. Donald Trump is covering up a gigantic pedophile ring, and because no countervailing information is allowed to be aired, such as that the central accuser in all this, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, was a chronic fabricator, then people just switch off their critical thinking skills and join the mob.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.